There's something uniquely terrifying about being watched, not chased, not attacked, just observed, quietly, patiently, by someone who knows your routine better than you do, someone who blends into the background of your life until it's too late. You might notice them once, maybe twice on the same train in the same aisle at the grocery store, liking that old photo you forgot was public, and then the pattern begins. You lose sleep, you change your routes, you start questioning your sanity. Because stalking doesn't always begin with a scream, it starts with a stare, and tonight we're going deep into 3 horrifying true stalker stories that show just how easily obsession can invade your life, and how impossible it can be to escape once it does. These are not urban legends. These are not ghost stories. These are real, and they could happen to anyone, even you. So lock your doors, close your blinds, and whatever you do, don't ignore that feeling that someone's watching you. Because they might be. Story 1, he changed my wallpaper. It started, as most things do now, with a message, just a DM on Instagram, the kind of thing you brush off without a second thought, something casual and vaguely flirtatious from an account that looked normal enough, a guy in his late 20s, a handful of gym selfies, a bio that rate a fitness tech dream big, and a grid full of motivational quotes, coffee cup close-ups, and those overly edited travel pics you see in every influencer reel. We didn't follow him, didn't even recognize the name, but the message was polite. Hey, I really love your vibe. I hope this isn't weird, but you seem super creative and cool. Just wanted to say hi. And while she didn't respond, didn't even open it at first. She didn't block him either, because what was the point? People message strangers all the time, and it didn't feel like anything worth reacting to, but that message was the thread that, once pulled, slowly unraveled every part of her life. Within days, he'd viewed every one of her stories, liked her photos from over a year ago, and commented innocuous things like a "this is beautiful" or "a great lighting." The sort of public engagement that didn't set off alarm bells but registered enough that she started to feel his digital presence accumulating like dust in the corners. Just enough to make you notice when it's too late. Then came the LinkedIn request, which felt slightly off. Not just because she hadn't listed her company on Instagram, but because it was the exact version of her full name she only used professionally, the one buried behind a privacy firewall she was sure hadn't been breached. And while she told herself it was probably just someone good at Googling, a recruiter maybe, it didn't explain the email that came 2 days later, addressed to her work account, signed to yours, with no body text and no sender name, just a blank screen in the subject line. Coffee? A message she couldn't trace, couldn't reply to, and couldn't stop thinking about. She updated her passwords, of course, even switched her Instagram to private, locked down her Facebook, checked her laptop for spyware. She didn't find anything, and tried to dismiss it all as coincidence, a case of the internet being weird in the way it sometimes is, but it kept getting weirder. The Spotify playlists that began to autoplay on her phone were songs she hadn't added, titles like Eyes on You and A Silent Rooms, chill lo-fi tracks with distorted vocal samples whispering things like "you can't hide." And one night, when she came home from work and opened her notes app to check her grocery list, she found a new note simply titled "The Monday" with a single entry beneath it, a blue coat, brown boots, hair down, an exact description of what she had worn that day, which no one at her office had mentioned and which she hadn't posted online. That was the night she started unplugging her Wi-Fi at bedtime and taping over her laptop camera, but it didn't stop the intrusions, the lights in her apartment, and it flickered at odd intervals even when there wasn't a storm. And one morning, her Amazon history showed items she hadn't searched, a guide to surveillance countermeasures, pepper spray, and a hardcover book titled "Disappearing in America." We've filed a police report, of course, but they told her unless there was a direct threat or physical confrontation, there wasn't much they could do. It was probably someone playing a prank, they said, and she should just log off for a bit and wait it out. Which felt like telling someone in a burning house to just shut the curtains and hope the fire doesn't spread. She took a few days off work and stayed with a friend, but even there, her phone would vibrate randomly at 3:13 a.m. with silent notifications, and when she checked, there was nothing. No app activity, just the timestamp. When she returned to her apartment, she found her toothbrush wet, her bathroom mirror slightly fogged up even though she hadn't showered, and the toilet seat up. Tiny, easily dismissed details that accumulated like red flags on a battlefield no one else could see. She bought a camera Jimar, started using burner phones, switched her home locks to keypads she could reset daily, but he adapted. Her printer once spat out a single sheet of paper with the words of stills here in plain black font, and when she brought it to the police, they asked if she had any proof it hadn't been a prank from a friend or ex. Her landlord said there were no signs of forced entry and suggested maybe she was under stress, maybe seeing things, and Ava wanted to scream because that was part of it. The gaslighting that stalkers do without ever speaking, making you question your own mind, eroding the boundary between real and imagined until your entire life feels like a haunted house and no one else believes in ghosts. She set up a motion camera in her living room, one with cloud backup, and finally caught something, or thought she did. A brief clip at 2:48 a.m. showing her bedroom door inching open slowly, as if pushed by someone just out of frame, but the footage glitched at the crucial moment. A digital smear swallowing the figure and replacing it with static, as if whoever was behind it knew how to edit reality itself. Eva stopped sleeping, started pacing through her apartment with a knife in her hand, lost 12 pounds in a month, and even her therapist, who initially diagnosed her with acute stress disorder, began to wonder if something real was happening, something beyond paranoia. One morning, as she walked to work, she saw a man with his phone held vertically, not filming the street or taking a call, just pointing it at her from across the intersection, and when their eyes met, he smiled, not a smirk, not a grin, but a calm, patient smile like someone who knows the ending of the story and is just waiting for you to catch up. She ran, ducked into a bookstore, hid behind the biographies until her pulse slowed, but when she left, her phone pinged with a new airdrop. No airdrop. Notification, a file titled Running. JPG, that was a blurry photo of her mid-sprint, timestamped 3 minutes earlier. She screamed in the street, sobbed in the back of an Uber, and went straight to the police station with the photo. But again, nothing could be done. Airdrop was anonymous, unless he sent it from a saved contact. There was no trace. Her parents wanted her to move back home, but she didn't want to bring the shadow with her. Didn't want to explain how every time she opened her fridge and saw a different item move to a new shelf, she knew he'd been inside. Somehow, some way. And the breaking point came when she opened her laptop one night and found her desktop wallpaper changed to a photo she had never taken. Herself asleep in bed, mouth slightly open, clearly unaware, the angle suggesting it had been taken from the closet. She screamed, threw up, unplugged everything, and spent the night in a hotel. But when she opened the drawer to grab the TV remote, she found a note folded neatly, typed no signature, that read, "You like this one better." It took a full breakdown and hospitalization before anyone took her seriously. Her brother hired a private investigator who discovered multiple wireless cameras hidden in her apartment, in vents and smoke detectors, all feeding to an external network the stalker had accessed via a nearby building's unsecured router. He had been watching for months, logging her keystrokes, copying her screen activity, recording her voice through her laptop mic even when it was off. The Pi also traced a small GPS tracker hidden in the undercarriage of her car, suggesting he had been following her physically too, and even now, even after changing apartments, phones, and identities, never feels alone in the way she used to. Because digital stalking doesn't end when the person is caught or flees. It lingers in the sense that any message, any sound, any glimmer of movement in the corner of your screen could be him finding his way back, because it was never just about watching. It was about making her feel watched forever. Story 2. He always took the same It started with the 7:42 train. Always the same one, always the same car, the back left section where fewer people sat, and the windows still had those faint scratches from years of graffiti cleanup. And when Emily first noticed him, he seemed like just another commuter, maybe 5 or 6 years older. Dressed like an adjunct professor or a bookstore manager, the kind of man you forget the second you stop looking at him. Plain jacket, round glasses, polite posture, and a habit of never making direct eye contact, but somehow always facing her general direction. And she didn't think much of it at first. Anomina maybe even appreciated the consistency like a harmless background detail in the routine chaos of weekday life, but then came the day he followed her off the train, not in an obvious movie villain way, just quietly got off when she did, walked far enough behind that it didn't feel suspicious, but close enough that when she turned the final corner before her apartment, he was still there, and that was the first twinge of something dark crawling up her spine. She shook it off, told herself she was being paranoid, that lots of people lived in her neighborhood. Maybe they just shared a similar route, but it kept happening. Morning after morning, he'd be on the platform when she arrived, sometimes already seated by the time she boarded, sometimes stepping into the car just behind her, always within visual range but never beside her, never speaking, just watching without looking. And the strangeness began to thicken when she realized he never got off the train unless she did. She tested it one day by staying on past her usual stop, pretending to read, and when she looked up at the station past her apartment, there he was in the reflection of the window, still seated, still watching her in that not watching way, until she stood up and exited at the next stop, and he followed. That night, she called her best friend Lee and tried to explain the situation, how it was more of a feeling than a fact, but also how the facts were starting to line up in ways that didn't feel random, how she saw him once outside the pharmacy near her street, just standing across the road like he was waiting for a bus that never came, and how she thought she spotted him one night near the mailbox across from her building, half hidden in the shadow of a tree, face obscured by the hood of his jacket, hands in his pockets, not moving. And Lee told her she needed to report it, even if nothing had happened yet, because this was how things started. And maybe if the police got involved early, it could be shut down before it got worse. But when Emily did call, the officer she spoke to asked if the man had threatened her, if he'd touched her or tried to enter her home. And when she said no, not yet, they told her there wasn't much they could do without a name or clear intent. It was public space after all, and he hadn't broken any laws. The next morning, Emily skipped her usual train, waited at a cafe 2 stops down, and boarded from there. And there he was, 3 rows away, pretending to scroll through his phone, and the sight of him made her drop her coffee. Made her legs freeze in place until the conductor's voice snapped her out of it and she bolted off the train before it pulled away, locking herself in the women's restroom at the station and sobbing silently into her scarf. She started taking Ubers instead, expensive but necessary, and for a few weeks it felt like she'd reclaimed her life until the first package arrived. A manila envelope slid under her apartment door while she was out, containing a single Polaroid photo of her sitting on her couch watching TV. Taken through her living room window, she screamed, called the police again, and this time they sent someone out who checked for signs of forced entry but found none. The locks were intact, no broken windows, no fingerprints, just the envelope, just the photo, just her dread tightening like a wire around her ribs. Bought blackout curtains, changed her locks, moved furniture to block her bedroom door at night, and tried to sleep with the kitchen knife under her pillow. But the sounds began, scraping on the fire escape, faint knocks on the wall she shared with the empty unit next door, the slow creak of her hallway floorboards when she wasn't moving, and worst of all, the new Polaroids, one in her mailbox showing her walking home with groceries, another slid under her windshield wiper after work, one left on her pillow when she forgot to lock the balcony door during a heat wave. Each photo taken from a different angle, a different distance, a different moment in time that she had no memory of being watched. The police promised extra patrols, but said again, there was nothing they could do without catching him in the act, and she began to feel like her entire life was one long moment before the act, a suspended breath of waiting to be hunted in plain sight. She stopped going out, quit her job, started sleeping during the day and staying awake at night because that was when the noises got worse. Muffled breathing just outside her bedroom window, a light tapping on her air conditioner, the soft squeal of metal being touched too gently to be wind, and then came the note, handwritten in block letters on yellow legal paper, taped to the inside of her fridge door one morning. are starting to notice me. And she collapsed onto the kitchen floor and screamed until the neighbors called 911. And when the EMT arrived, she couldn't even explain the terror properly, because what language is there for someone who moves like smoke and lives in the spaces between your life, never seen clearly, never caught, always close enough to ruin you without touching you? She moved in with her sister 2 cities over, changed her number, deleted all social media, and was finally beginning to sleep again when she found a familiar Polaroid taped to the bathroom mirror one morning, a photo of her brushing her teeth in the hoo. Her sister's guest room taken the night before, the same timestamp as her morning alarm, and when she screamed, her sister came running, saw the photo, and for the first time, someone believed her without question. And that photo became evidence. The detectives took it seriously. The apartment was swept, cameras were installed, and the man was eventually caught in the act, trying to pick the lock at 2:37 a.m. while wearing latex gloves and holding a small Ziploc bag of hair clippings that, after DNA testing matched strands from Emily's apartment, her old work desk, and her discarded clothes at the laundromat, they found hundreds of photos, journals, printed screenshots of her messages, mail he had stolen from her trash, and an elaborate log of her daily habits dating back almost a year and a half, routes, moods, what she wore, who she spoke to when she looked. Over her shoulder, he was sentenced, eventually, to 5 years, maybe 6, but she never felt the sentence was his. It was hers, because long after he was gone, the sound of a train platform announcement still made her blood run cold, and every time a stranger walked a little too closely behind her and her, she felt herself drift back to those long, quiet walks from the station, where someone was always there, just far enough away to be legal, but close enough to destroy her from the inside out. Story 3. He knew where my spare key was. They met the way 1,000 couples do, through friends, at a mutual's birthday party at a loud bar downtown, where the music was too loud to talk and the drinks were too weak to matter. And at first, Melissa hadn't even noticed him beyond a passing compliment on her boots and a shared laugh over the horrible DJ, but something about the way he asked for her number, unassuming, quiet, no pressure, made her give it, and something about the way he waited 3 days to text her made her reply. And by the 3rd date, she was already thinking about the long term. Lucas was attentive in the kind of way that feels like safety at first. He walked her home every night, waited for her text to make sure she got in. Okay, learned how she took her coffee by the 2nd week, and when she told him, Lizzie told him about the ex who once raised his voice too often, he'd shaken his head and said, "You never have to worry about that with me," and she believed him. They moved fast, sure, but it felt natural, like finding the right rhythm after years of dancing alone, and by the 4th month he had a drawer in her apartment and a toothbrush next to hers, and when he started spending more nights than not in her bed, she let him. It wasn't until month 6 that things shifted, so subtly, so softly, that she didn't register it at first, like a song lowering in volume so slowly, you don't notice the silence until it's already there. It began with questions, gentle, curious questions that came from a place of love. He said, about who she was texting, where she'd been, why she was wearing makeup if she was only going to the grocery store, and when she laughed it off, he apologized, said he was just insecure, just wanted to feel close, and she forgave it because everyone has baggage and she had her own. But soon the questions became accusations wrapped in smiles. Just weird that you never post me on Instagram. I saw your location change at midnight. Were you out? And the intimacy that once felt protective began to feel like a leash being quietly tightened around her life. She told herself he was just struggling, that he needed time to trust her, but then he started showing up places she hadn't told him she'd be, outside her work when she hadn't mentioned a shift waiting at her gym when she'd said she was going to cancel that day, and when she asked how he knew, he'd shrug and say, "I know you," like it was romantic, not surveillance. When she tried to pull back, to take a few days for herself, he became soft and apologetic, wrote her long messages about how he just wanted to be better, how scared he was of losing her, and how she was the best thing that had ever happened to him. He weaponized his vulnerability so skillfully that she felt like the bad guy for needing space, and when he cried in front of her for the first time, sobbing about how she was his anchor, she promised not to leave. The first time he entered her apartment without her knowing, she was out with friends, and when she came home, everything looked normal except her phone charger had been moved from the wall to the nightstand. A small, unremarkable thing, except she never left it there. And the pit in her stomach didn't fade, even when she tried to explain it away. When she confronted him, he denied it so calmly that she started to believe she had misremembered, until it happened again. Her coat was in the wrong closet. A glass she hadn't used was in the sink. Her shampoo cap was twisted the wrong way, and that time she found the most terrifying detail of all. The spare key she kept taped behind her electric panel was gone, and in its place, a note in her handwriting that simply read, "You're safe now," which she had no memory of writing. She ran to the police, shaking, barely able to get the words out, and they listened, took notes, but told her unless there was a break-in or physical violence, there was nothing actionable, especially because Lucas had been staying there regularly, meaning it was hard to prove. You didn't have permission. She changed the locks, bought a camera for her door, moved the spare key to a friend's apartment, and the next week, she came home to find all the cabinet doors open and the camera unplugged. He'd somehow gotten in again, and this time she found a USB drive in the center of her bed, containing only a folder labeled "was filled with photos of her, sleeping, showering, eating breakfast, watching TV, some clearly from within her apartment, some zoomed in from the window across the alley. And in every photo she was alone, or so she thought, until she saw one where his reflection was visible in the black of her turned-off TV. She brought it to the police again, crying, begging them to do something, and while they finally agreed to file a report, they told her there was no law against enraying it. Someone owning photos of their own girlfriend, and unless she could prove a legal entry or threat, it wouldn't hold up. She got a restraining order, which Lucas ignored immediately, and the police issued a warning but not an arrest, and the spiral continued. She lost her job after missing too many shifts, couldn't sleep for more than an hour at a time, and her friends started pulling away because she was always anxious, always talking about him, always terrified in a way they couldn't understand. Then came the night she heard breathing, actual breathing through the vent in her closet, and when she opened the grate, she found nothing but the faintest trace of heat, like someone had just moved away from it. The building manager found no signs of forced entry, no damage, and told her maybe she was just overtired, and she started to believe that maybe she was losing her mind. Until one night, she fell asleep with her phone under her pillow and woke up to find it gone, only for it to turn back on an hour later in the trash bin beneath her bathroom sink recording audio. The final straw came when her apartment caught fire, not a blaze, but a slow smoldering burn from the back of her stove, where someone had wedged a rag into the gas burner and left the dial barely open enough to leak fumes for hours, but not enough to ignite until she turned the oven on. And by then it was too late. She escaped with burns on her legs and smoke damage in her lungs, and only then did the police finally connect the dots, found his fingerprints in the hallway, matched his GPS data to the scene, and issued a warrant. When they arrested him, he had 4 phones, 2 laptops, a handwritten journal detailing her every movement for over a year, and a duffel bag packed with zip ties, gloves, and a burner phone labeled Mel's new number. In court, he cried again, said he'd been trying to protect her from herself, said she was unstable, and he had only ever been trying to help. And to her horror, his public defender used her own texts, messages from early in their relationship, to suggest she had invited his closeness, his attention, his surveillance. The trial dragged on for months, and though he was eventually sentenced to 8 years, she moved 3 times in the first 12 months after the verdict, changed her name, dyed her hair, got a dog, and still, she checks under her bed every night, still leaves the TV on to drown out the silence, and still jolts awake at 4:23 a.m. almost every morning, the exact time he once texted her, "I know where your spare key is," and sometimes in the black stretch between waking and daylight, she still thinks she hears someone turning it in the lock. You survived the stories. But here's the thing about stalkers. They don't stop when the story ends. For their victims, it's never really over. It lingers in shadows and paranoia, in the sound of a footstep behind you when no one's there. These weren't characters. These were people. And the scariest part, most stalkers are never caught. Most stories don't end with justice. They end with fear and silence. If you or someone you know is being stalked, take it seriously. You are not imagining it, and you are not alone. If these stories disturbed you, share them. Let people know how real this is, and if you felt watched during this video, maybe that's because you were. Until next time, stay aware, stay safe, and never ignore your gut. Sometimes it's the only warning you'll get.